He does interrupt our schedules. And, thinking of Felix, that righteousness, righteousness and self-control and then judgment. Those are, that he was a heavy hitter to someone being led by the Spirit, saying, I just want to speak truth to you. And I think there must have been something in his voice, like we heard this morning when Pastor Dave spoke, it's with this compulsion of love, of care.
Yeah.
We really want the best for you. I think that's what Paul's, the spirit of what he was speaking in is, I really want the best for you, Felix. There's something better for you. There's salvation for you.
Yeah, always. And we see it all throughout scriptures. We are to speak boldly, but with respect and with gentleness. And he does it. He brings it with love. He brings it with respect. There's that desire to see people come draw near to the Father's heart. So it's not doing it because Paul's like, I know more than you and you should be listening to me because I'm a man of God. It's more like, hey, I want you to draw close to him and receive salvation. And if we do that ourselves as well, in our families, in our marriages, in our workplace, and people see that the root of where our words come from is a heart that has been transformed, it's a lot easier to draw near. But again, people have that option to say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with this, it's inconvenient, and they can shut it down. And again, that's when we start hardening our hearts to the voice of God. And then we end up in a bad place.
It's encouraging to find, listening to this, it's encouraging because we're all inconvenienced at some point. There's those appointed seasons that come, and they're seasons.
Yeah.
There's an appointed season to share your testimony. Paul took advantage of that. There's an appointed season for us to share of our time, of our talent, of our treasure. There's a time to give.
Yeah.
And Ecclesiastes talks about that. There's a time to sow and a time to reap. So when are those appointed times that we don't want to procrastinate? Because that doesn't necessarily mean the window's always going to be open. You want to understand the appointed time.
That's good, yeah.
I think in the area of finances in particular, where we're able to give liberally, and we certainly have seen so much of that as we've gone through the book of Acts, of even Paul generously taking an offering back to Jerusalem. There's a season for that. There's a time to give. And you don't want to miss those appointed times, because when you sow at that appointed time, there is something, but it's not always there. So you have to recognize those. We have to recognize those appointed times.
Yeah.
It's a great message on being led by the Spirit and having our hearts open to that.
That's it. And I think each time when we respond to God positively rather than negatively, when we respond by leaning in rather than drawing back, softening rather than hardening, we become more like Christ, and we're stepping into that place where we have greater peace, greater satisfaction, greater fulfillment in life. And when we harden our hearts, everything gets harder. Life just gets harder. You think you're going to do better because, hey, I am free to do whatever I want. I'm opposing God. I want to be free and liberal to do whatever I want. But it actually becomes worse and becomes harder for us.
You know what's worth noting, and you had mentioned this in the earlier service, is that Paul was the one that was standing up to Felix and to even Drusilla, the group that was there. He was the one that was sharing his testimony, but there were people praying for him. And so it's a good reminder for those that are, even for those in leadership, to remember them in prayer. Also, as the importance of being in fellowship with other people, so that you have people praying for you. I think that's why small groups, life groups, are so meaningful.
Yeah.
Because you today, tomorrow, sometime this week, could be in that position that Paul is in, and you're giving a defense of your testimony, so to speak. And you may be speaking about righteousness, self-control, judgment. And then you come together in a small group and we share, where did you see God move this week? How was God moving in your life? And you are able to give testimony that you were sharing with someone. And then what happens at life group? we all gather together and we pray, and then we pray for the person that you're ministering to. And which is what it should be. Paul had that.
He did. And he asked churches to pray for him all the time. You would have thought, it's Paul. He's great. He's bold. He's preaching. He's going around. He's done so much.
Right.
But he still keeps asking people to pray for him. So how much more do we need prayer as well? And again, we see that there's this move of God through the church, not just individuals, but through the church as a body, bringing about the gospel throughout the ends of the earth. And so we must be plugged in, and it's a place where we're also, not only, as Pastor Dave said, are we called to be accountable to God, but we're also accountable to one another. And so we should be asking each other, hey, when was the last time you shared your testimony in life group? Or when was the last time you shared the gospel with someone? And I think if we do that on a regular basis, then we're thinking, you know what, I have some people that I'm accountable to that are going to ask me these difficult questions. How are you doing with your thought life? How are you doing with your self-control? As we see here.
Conversation.
How are you doing with your words? And if someone has a hard time controlling their tongue, someone should gently restore them, bring them, you know what, this is not, as followers of Christ, this is how we use our tongue. It's an unruly member, and but we are to bring it into obedience to Christ. So
I think a great example of that was last night, water baptism with the people. That wasn't convenient. It's never convenient to go down to the ocean and to be in such a public place, all these people around. And of course, that's not the only place. It doesn't have to be water baptism like
Correct.
that. But the inconvenience of getting here, to be at a class, to go down to the water, that wasn't convenient. But then reminding ourselves of that quote from Rick Warren, that God's more interested in our character than our convenience.
Yeah.
And that's what it's all about, is our character. So lots to ponder this week, and hopefully you have some opportunity to talk to someone, especially in our life groups. We'll be discussing this. So God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your week.
love you guys.